everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Coaching in a Skilled Agile Framework Environment that drives effective communication. My name is William Kosila, and I'll be your host, and I'm excited to be hosting this session today on coaching and a skilled agile framework. I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Shirley Thompson. Shirley is a professional coach and she leads organizations through transformation. She's passionate about supporting busy achievers work on what is meaningful to them and also to help organizations improve collaborative working. Her background is in software engineering. She's got the project management certifications and she's just graduated with her PhD. So she's got bags of knowledge to share on this particular webinar. And she's also a distinguished Toastmaster, a new grandmother, and has presented on hundreds of webinars. Shirley, it's a real pleasure to have you on today's session. And before I hand over to Shirley, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat box. Please do feel free to share the webinar. And we've got upcoming webinars on our page. Join us for upcoming webinars. So Shirley, I will now hand over the page to you.
Oh, thank you, William. That's very flattering introduction. Thank you so much. Yes, I echo your words that we'd like to enter a conversation today as much as possible in a webinar anyway. And we'll make sure that we leave at least 15 minutes at the end for questions. So please write in the chat box anytime you want to convey a thought or an idea. So as your presenter today, my main aim is to persuade you to adopt the idea that the main intention of an agile coaching culture is effective communications. I believe this perspective can help people change. An agile coaching culture is all about people and their mindset. And I want to support Agile's transformation of the way people work. I believe coaching has embraced an understanding of soft skills far better than any other discipline. And I want to support coaches and anyone using the coach-like soft skills to improve their work. Of course, you may not agree, and that's why I've got a question mark. That's fine, because everyone's entitled to their own view, but let's share our ideas and viewpoints. I'm very much a pragmatist who believes that communities working out what works in practice together is a valid theory for what is right. Now, I'm going to talk about my research now briefly, and so that we get an idea of the background and where I'm coming from. I will refer to it later, but it's good, I think, to explain it first, and then I don't need to explain it again. So it was a small study, my research, 7 project managers. That means they were leaders of teams or facilitators of groups who demonstrated that they benefited at work from having undergone 1 day's coach training and then just 6 coaching sessions, which they facilitated over 6 months. Now, they and I think training is really important because coaching is just an English word. It has no clear definition. Indeed, people often have different ideas about what it entails. And for the coaching practice, these participants were introduced to a similar professional, someone they didn't know, who was willing to be coached by a novice coach. And then they were left to facilitate the sessions, which worked on real issues. Now, for these leaders, their underlying soft skills changed at work, which suggests that anyone can benefit in some way. Now, I admit to being very pleased because obviously that was the idea of my research, to show the benefits of coaching to the coach, which doesn't get a lot of attention in the literature. This certainly has been my experience of learning to coach. My confidence in my job role shot up in ways unrelated to coaching others. So I think this is really exciting because fairness is one of my values. I see no reason why coaches should have all the advantages. Of course, anyone can learn how to coach and then start practicing those skills with other people. And soft skills get better over time with experience. So in summary, the idea that the participants learned better soft skills and had a huge confidence as a result in their job role is the thing that I'm basing my ideas on, that effective coaching, effective communication is actually very successful. It improves our in terms of collaboration at work. Okay, so let's move on. So my agenda is clear, I hope. So why effective communications? I'm going to explain that. And then I'm going to try and get into addressing your fears and challenges over agile coaching culture and how you think my ideas might impact you. My idea is very much a coaching philosophy of facilitating your thoughts, getting you to think out loud, reflect, and challenge yourself. So that's my thoughts, but actually it'd be nice to have your intentions now. And I think you have a poll, William, because you'd like to know who is on the call first.
Yes, Shirley. So I'm going to be launching the poll to know who's on the call and to also get to align more of the questions for this particular session. So I'm launching the poll now. So we'll have 20 seconds for the poll. Okay, we've ended the polling and we've got a member of a safe agile environment who's joined us today. Shirley, over to you.
Okay, great. Well, what I'd really like to do now is to get everyone's intentions for the webinar. So if they could write something in the chat box about what they'd like to get out of the session or their expectations of what they might hear, that would be really useful. And then we can make sure that we've addressed them at the end. Is there anything that you would like to suggest, William?
Yeah, I'm quite intrigued by the topic on effective communication and how it can lead to better agile culture, especially in an agile and a skilled agile environment. So I'm expecting to learn more about using effective communication to improve the agile culture in the organization. So I'm looking forward to this webinar.
Okay, great. Right, so do you want to stop there and just have a little review of the intro? Do we know how long we've taken? For example, do you want to get Gideon's view?
Okay, let's get Gideon's view. Hi, Gideon.
Hi, William. Hi, Shirley. I don't have much to say now. I'm
okay.
Just warming up. I've been piqued by the introduction.
Okay.
I've seen the content that you want to discuss, and so I want to know more.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
So has it been fluid and
Yes, absolutely perfect so far?
Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Okay then.
Okay, so Gideon, what I'm doing is I'll put you and myself on mute intermittently. Okay. You can also put yourself on mute.
Okay.
So we don't impact Shirley's flow.
Okay.
All right.
I agree.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to run through my slides now. So my pitch is coming up next, but I'm just going to do an outline. All right, so that we don't take up the whole hour and we focus on the beginning, the end, and how it works. So, right, so thank you for your thoughts, and we'll try and come back to those later, and you're very welcome to add any thoughts as we go along. So let's get back to my position that the intention of an agile culture is to establish effective communications. So my pitch is all about those three words: agile, coaching, and culture, just three English words. And I'm going to start with culture, which in my mind is about shared feelings and thoughts. So I talk about, we are familiar with human cultures. We know the difference between life in a big city and life in the rural community, or life in different countries. We know we've evolved cultures over thousands of years. I've recently been reading the work of Antonio Damasio, who argues that the human mind has evolved from nervous systems that have evolved from basic organisms. So he explains how organisms can detect chemical differences between the insides of a cell and the outsides. It knows whether the environment is friend or foe. He argues that social insects can work together in groups really effectively, even making changes according to the environment, yet they have nothing like the mind of a human. As members of organisations, you might prefer Shine's view that culture is something you can direct and organise. So if organisations have mission statements, values, aims to be customer focused and that sort of thing, then maybe you can create a culture top down. My suggestion is that culture arrives from and maintains communication, whether emergent from subconscious feelings or architected through the spoken word. But I wonder what you think. What are your thoughts on culture? How might you define it beyond effective communication? So please write in the chat box, or William, I think you have a poll.
Yes, I have a poll, and I'm going to be sharing the poll on culture. So I'm launching the poll, and this poll will be taking 10 seconds.
Okay.
So I've ended the poll, and culture for most of the attendees is promoting good examples within organizations.
Great. Well, thank you, William. So that's culture. That's our thoughts on culture. Let's hold those thoughts and move on to coaching. So this is where my research just comes in. So if you just think of the competencies of a coach, and different training organizations focus their accreditations on a competencies list, I've chosen to take this bit of literature by Maltby, Marsick and Goach, which took the ICF competencies in 2014, reverse engineered them, and came up with a set of skills which they felt coaches exhibit. And they related to communication skills, relating skills, and facilitating skills. Now, that's perhaps not surprising at all when you think coaching is firstly a conversation and secondly, an agreed relationship. There's no way you can coach if a trusting relationship is not in place. And finally, thirdly, it has an intention to encourage the coachee to make changes. These were the very skills that I was aiming to prove in my research were useful to anyone in any situation. From my perspective, coaching is a philosophical use of soft skills. In other words, it's got intentions behind it, and coaches are meant to have very good, effective communications. For example, in my research, clear guidance was given that coaches should not give advice. So there's an intention, not to actually ask questions and be curious far more than anything else, and not to be in any kind of advice giving mode like mentoring or teaching, or maybe even therapy or consulting where you give suggestions. The training mainly allowed discussion to take place so participants could get a feel for the difference. Now, my research came up with this view of soft skills. They are essentially a set of intentions and effective communication. Now, there's thinking skills right in the center, and we all know people are thinking all the time. That's how the mind works, but you can include feelings in there as well. So your choices about what you're going to do is coming from the thought processes, thoughts and feelings. But the middle layer, and I apologize for it not being very purple, it was purple when I started, is effective communication. So this includes communication, listening, questioning, and relating skills. And my participants in the research couldn't tell the difference between communication and relating. So they all thought they were doing coach-like things at work. But that's because there's so much linkage between communication and relating. So things like rapport and trust and respect all come through things like giving people lots of attention, which is mostly managing of self to be able to listen that well. And then it depends on the other person as well. So effective communication is a two-way thing. And then if you put effective communication in that layer, then you can think of everything else that seems like a soft skill, like management or leadership, you can think of as intentions. So if you look at my list, coaching, collaborating, directing, supporting, social, they all have intentions. You know, if I want to be social with someone, then I aim to be friendly. I want to get the other person to be friendly back. If I want to support somebody, then I give them lots of attention and listen to what they want to say. You know, I might even just do that as a Samaritan. I might just listen. If I'm directing, if it's an emergency, I just want to tell people what to do. I just want them to get on with it. So I'll raise my voice and make them listen. So I hope that makes sense. So this is where I'm coming from. So let's have a think about your thoughts. What are your thoughts on what coaching entails? How might you define it beyond effective communication? And I think you have another poll, William, or people are welcome to write in the chat box.
People are welcome to write in the chat box, and I'm also going to share the last poll on coaching from your experience. Yep, I'm launching the poll. Okay, I've ended the polling, and the focus on coaching was on mentoring, where we had more people voting for mentoring over all the other areas.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So I would say mentoring is another one of these intentional skills. So you're communicating, but you have an intention to mentor, which for me means give some advice. So, okay, that's slightly different to coaching, I would say. And I would love to have a debate with people about what the difference is and how people know when they're in one thing or another. But for now, I'm going to move on to the final English word of three, so agile. So why I think Agile's effective communication is because I do lots of reading that say things like this: people first, collaboration, learning oriented, working solutions over documentation, individuals and interactions, stakeholder collaboration, responding to change. For me, they're all about people or communicating to people certain ideas and getting people to interact. So all about the things we're talking about. So I feel really comfortable with that. I wonder how you feel with that. What else is agile apart from effective communication? Now this is your image, William. So I inserted a slide here.
All right. So for organizations that are going through agile implementation, some will be small, some will be big organizations. The Skilled Agile framework focuses on helping organizations large and small on such a journey. And what Shirley has talked about so far, focusing on effective communication, both up and down the ladder, is seen in the Skilled Agile framework. There's a team layer, there's the portfolio layer, which brings leaders to the table to have discussions. One of Skilled Agile's events is the PI planning event where all the leadership and everyone involved in the organization would come in and share the organization's current roadmap. And that, I think, is effective communication. And as Shirley is building on her webinar, I'm also looking at learning more from this particular webinar. Thank you so far, Shirley.
Great. So let's allow everyone else to kind of reflect on their thoughts about the intentions of an agile coaching culture overall. So this is now embedding all three words. What does this entail beyond effective communication? Any thoughts from anyone at this stage? So I'm going to move on now about why we want an agile coaching culture, because I want to get into that second half of the webinar where we address people's fears and challenges. And we can't do that unless we know what outcomes we want from an agile coaching culture. And I'm taking these three ideas from a book by Pixton, Nicolaisen and Gibson, quite fairly recent book that talks about productivity, engagement and contribution. And I hope you will agree that they are three things that we're looking for. So our job today is to work out what can go wrong. So if we have these three intentions, we need to know that actually we only get those things. We can set an intention to be productive and have everyone engaged and contribute, but how do we know it's actually going to happen? Hopefully it is happening, but if you're all on the webinar, maybe you're looking for ways to improve things. So let's see what your fears are in the chat box. What do you think goes wrong with the culture? What might stop these three things being achieved?
So, Shirley, earlier on you asked about how would an agile culture help such organizations, and an item from the chat boxes. Organizations are interested in delivering value quicker, and next I'll add any items from the chat box on things that could go wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, personally, from my viewpoint on things that could go wrong are people who will be interested in embracing the agile coaching culture and leading it might move on after they've gotten new roles or they've been promoted, and that can impact a good culture that has been created so far. So those are one of my fears, people moving on. And I know it's life, but it impacts the rhythm of teams.
Okay. So what you're saying is that some people are more engaged than others. So if you engage the leader, that doesn't necessarily mean that other people are engaged.
Yeah.
All right, so engagement's partial kind of thing. I think the first point you made seemed to be about productivity, about success of achieving the culture. So not getting the buy-in. Is that engagement again, or is that a productivity related thing, your first point?
And my first point is related around engagement.
Okay.
And with good engagement leads to productivity.
Okay.
Yeah, so they are all intertwined.
Okay.
From my point of view.
All right. Well, I'd like us to take a different view, perhaps, because here's some of the fears that I've heard other people say. So we can add yours to this. So people are worried about the huge investment of time and money with unknown return. They don't get an increase in productivity. They go into turmoil. They don't know the risks, and people aren't ready. So maybe you have covered some of those things, William. I've certainly read a lot about those. But my position is, what happens if we just aim for effective communication as an outcome. So we kind of put productivity and engagement and contribution to the side and just focus in on effective communication. My research suggested that people were just much more confident, got more done, got more buy-in from the team if they just ensured there was effective communication going on. And I'm going to explain some of that in a little bit more detail. My position is if we just aim for effective communication, then all we have to worry about is people or the message or the intentions behind the messages as the things that might go wrong. And these are things that perhaps we can address with a little bit more specificity rather than these abstract things of productivity, engagement, contribution, which somehow feel bigger. You can't get your mind around them. They're complex issues. So I'm going to talk about my research now and what that found. So using coaching skills. So this is something you can teach people. The participants felt they were more supportive to others. And that meant when they were supportive to others, they were really listening very well, giving people attention and almost desiring contribution. Almost from their coaching practice experience, they felt that if they gave someone attention, then they automatically got more information. So it was like, oh, I'm going to give attention and then someone will tell me more things. So they kind of took that into work, and it seemed to work for them, at least for some people. Obviously you can't rely on everybody, but the pure act of listening and showing you are listening gives some kind of feeling of care to the other person, and they volunteer more information. So being supportive is very much a coaching thing, as is the next thing, because the participants also took into work that they were more assertive about responsibility. So when they got into problem situations, instead of getting stuck in themselves, they actually took a step back and really wanted to get other people to fix the problem themselves. So they started being quite assertive, saying, you're responsible for this. This is your issue. You sort it out, or go see it if you can sort it out, and then I'll come and help if you can't, kind of thing. So again, this is very much coaching, because the coachee is totally responsible for their outcomes and also for the agenda of what's talked about in coaching. So this is something, again, that was taken straight back to work, and almost they were given permission to say you're responsible. This is your issue. You can sort this out yourself. And obviously they can fall back to being supportive if needs be. Ultimately, if people accepted responsibility, that was more of a delegation of tasks. And then the project manager felt, oh, this is really nice. This is collaborative. I'm offloading some of my work. In those situations of delegation, now you've got a topic that coaching skills can be really used. So most of the project leaders didn't coach, but one or two did in the situation where they had delegated. So they had someone standing in for them on a holiday, and they were a bit nervous about doing it. So there was a little bit of coaching going on. So yeah, great. The other interesting point about the research was that although the leader had intentions when they were at work, they found out there had to be agreement. So for example, you can see that in this picture, which is really just relating what I've just talked about. So if you look at the bottom of colleague A, there was a supportive relationship with this type of colleague, lots of rapport and agreement on the work goals. So obviously they were happy to work together. They knew what they were going for, but because there was more listening, there was more support going on, more really working together, more collaboration, I would say. But then there was this assertion of responsibility, which felt more like a real collaboration because work was being shared, and then the delegation at the top where you can actually coach and to develop people. But the point is that there needs to be a relationship and some agreement, and different people you can agree different things with. So you can't get everyone to accept responsibility, and you can't delegate to them. But you can mostly be supportive to everyone. But they're still going to have to respond in some way. Otherwise, you're probably not going to give them less support than you might give someone else. We're all human after all. So my message is to think about heart and head. And I think this intentional idea of soft skills is really important, because intentions we can think of in our mind. But we also need to think about the relationship we've got with people and what kind of respect, trust, rapport is there between us, and agreement. And so some questions you might like to ask, and you can see this with my 3 concentric circles now and 2 people. It perhaps makes more sense. Well, what is actually agreed? What is the shared intention between 2 people? What's the quality of relationship between those 2 people? And what's the quality of the communications between people? So you've got the basis of some understandable measures, if you like, here of understanding where you are. So that's really my pitch for arguing that effective communication is a way out of our challenges here, to take a first step towards an agile coaching culture. Let's go for effective communications and see where that lands. So let me ask you, which of your fears are not being addressed by effective communications? And let's have a few ideas in the chat box again. So William, would you like to suggest anything to get people's minds working?
Yeah. So in terms of the 3 areas you looked at, productivity, engagement, and the third one, Shirley, was?
Contribution.
Contribution. How does productivity, engagement, and contribution, how does a continuous learning culture enable all these 3? Because I'm looking at it from a perspective where if we encourage a continuous learning culture, will this help and alleviate fears and encourage effective communication?
I think creating a learning culture is really a coaching culture. So that's what coaching's about. It is about learning. That's what the main aim is. So I don't know, the book I mentioned, I've got some notes here. I mean, it talks about those 3 things. We all want productivity, right? In our increasingly complex world, yes. It seems intent on slowing us down. But according to the book, it says productivity increases because you let enthusiastic people use their natural energy to creatively solve issues rather than having to wait to be told. And staff become proactive than reactive in their communications and contributions. But I think you have to model being interested in that. So that's why giving attention and listening becomes really important. Unless you've recognized that if you do give 100% attention when you're listening, other people sense that you care, that they're contributing and they're actually giving you information. So I think we all want staff to make their best contribution, but they have to want to give their best contribution. So I think people are very affected by the psychological kind of underpinnings of what goes on. We're all affected by the subconscious stuff, even though we don't recognize it. So the more that we get out, the more we play to that and ask people to do things and encourage people to do things and value whatever contribution they give, I think that they will be more likely to give more information next time.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, it feels like I'm selling, which is not my intention, because I figure those on the call are already sold on the idea of agile coaching culture, but actually it doesn't happen for some reason.
And another fear I would entertain is the key person, like I said earlier, who starts it and drives everyone on such a journey could end up leaving as well.
Yeah.
So how would you embed this after that person has left without that mindset of ensuring that people are willing to take up things on with a continuous learning mindset?
Well, I suppose I'm a little unusual in that I'm very much of the mind that everyone needs to have coaching skills, not just the leader. So I think people coaching each other in any collaborative situation is useful. Okay. So I do a lot of coaching groups where everyone coaches each other, and I just think that works really well. So I would be encouraging that to happen. No, so not just putting the onus on the leader, otherwise the leader has to do too much. So we'll get on to some actions. Maybe that'll be helpful in the third part of the webinar. Is that okay?
Okay, Shirley. Yeah, that's fine. We currently have got no comments in the chat box, so it's okay to move on. Okay,
so I know I want to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. So what actions can you take as a result of this webinar? Let's just have a think about that, very coaching style. So William and I have come up with 3 ideas. Start a coaching culture if you haven't already. Grow yours and other people's skills. And you could set some measures. So let's go with the first one, start a coaching culture. My pitch is let's promote effective communication as the #1 action and support everyone on their work goals. Listen well, encourage contribution from people and value their contributions. So that means really listening and making sure that those ideas are shared around. Then people feel that they've contributed and they will be engaged more next time. If you're somehow negative and diss what they're contributing, it subconsciously will affect what they do in the future. And empower where you can. So not everyone will adopt this kind of coaching style straight away, maybe, but find out who's responsive to this kind of coaching culture, this kind of listening, contributing way of working, and encourage those people that respond well to you to actually take on some more skills. So tell them more about listening to everyone and encouraging everyone, and to help you in demanding supportive behaviour of everyone. Growing your skills. Well, join us on our next webinar. We're not sure when that's going to be, are we, William? But we're certainly planning to have a more detailed skills webinar. Encourage your team to join. As I say, everyone, these are just soft skills that everyone can use, and share your practice. Just tell people about what you're doing and why it works and how it works and when it doesn't work. And then the third suggestion is to set some KPIs. Well, just work out who's had training, who knows about soft skills, who's being attentive to their soft skills. Do they know what they're trying to achieve? You could do an evaluation of listening. So just ask people after well, anytime really, just to self-monitor their own listening during the day. Just ask them how well they think they're listening on a scale of 1 to 10 and how it could be better. And then another nice thing is to ask people how they feel they're being listened to on a scale of 1 to 10, just generally in the team. What stops it being a 10? And if nothing else, take time to reflect on the effectiveness of your own communication and relationships, please. Any questions?
Thank you, Shirley, for giving us such insights into coaching and how it can lead to effective communication. We are now going to begin answering questions submitted in today's presentation. As a reminder to everyone, you can still submit questions through the questions pane in your attendees control panel. And Shirley will be quite interested in answering all your questions and your thoughts that you had before coming to the webinar. My first question to Shirley will be, who should start the coaching culture?
Oh, you want me to give one answer for many, many organizations? I think it has to start with the person that wants the productivity, engagement, and contribution. Someone presumably has got a business case for it. But so somehow there has to be a message to everyone that says to sell the idea of its importance. Otherwise, why would anyone do it? I've known of champions in organisation for coaching cultures generally. It is possible for a champion to start it. So just any leader just gets a small group of people together and explains the ideas, and perhaps gets a trainer in and gets people to practice. So that can work. Fundamentally, I think people have to just want to work together better.
Okay, thanks, Shirley. And my second question is, as you always promote self-drive and you ensure that people should be willing to take up the mantle themselves, would it require a bit of leadership drive and support to ensure that an agile coaching culture works well?
Oh, without doubt. Yeah. I'm sure that starting in a small way is much more beneficial. But I think one of the reasons I'm pitching the effective communication route is that it's more generally acceptable that communication matters, whatever. So I think it's an easier message to give to people that we want to improve our communication. And know what our intentions are. So I think it's just for me, it's just a way of airing, well, what are we intending to do? And what kind of a working culture are we trying to aim for? You can actually have a debate.
Okay. I'm always open for debates on such healthy topics because I know coaching, communication are areas that ensure that whether you are in a large enterprise or a small enterprise, without these two, you don't get the three things you talked about. Higher productivity, engagement, and contribution from everyone. And as we await some questions from our attendees, I still have one more question on.
Okay.
You talked about Damasio and Shen talking about their thoughts on culture and how they both define culture from different perspectives, and you also had a perspective on culture.
Yeah.
And I know everyone will say before you kick off any initiative, understand the environment or the culture of the people who are in there. does culture in a way impact coaching?
I'm sure it does. If someone's very much of the mind of a hierarchical directive leadership style, then they would find coaching a bit strange. I think that people have gone on to Dragon's Den, for example, and tried to sell a coaching app, and the Dragons not being at all supportive. They can't see the point of coaching because if you don't know it already, then if you don't know about business already, you'll never be a business person. So I think you have to really be into collaborative working and understand the importance of autonomous teams to really buy into the coaching idea, because coaching is about working together and learning together, and that just relates to the high-performing team, autonomous team type environment, because in the current environment, you have to learn all the time. Things are changing all the time. You have to be accepting of change so much. And so if you need to build resilience in your team and work together to kind of cope in such turbulent times. So, I think the surrounding culture inevitably affects things, but I think you can create a culture in a bubble. Like you say, what happens when people leave and more people come in? It has to be quite strong to be able to withstand personnel changes. Does that answer your question?
It does, Shirley. Thank you so much. It does answer the question on scaling Agile and ensuring that when adapting to each environment, you observe the people in the environment and how your approach could impact the way people take a coaching culture on, because not all environments are the same, and culture is something that would help with effective change management, which I totally agree with.
Yeah, I mean, what I haven't addressed here at all is any kind of, how it return on investment, how much you have to invest, and what return you get on productivity. So, what I'm saying is that communication is a basic thing to all environments. So let's just focus on that. That's a first step. If you can work out what your risks are on effective communication, because it's about how much time do you invest with people to listen to them. Are they contributing? And coaching, ultimately, those soft skills ultimately will give you good relationships where you can give each other feedback. So I think what you're creating is a working culture more than anything, a collaborative culture, and some strengths that everyone's got. So that's why I'm very keen that everyone gets these skills and everyone practices the skills, because that's how the strength comes. Because you need to be able to talk to one another straight. If something's not working, you need to be able to say, it's not working, let's do something different.
Okay. And as you said, listening and being transparent in our views.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And the assumption is we've answered all the questions and we've come to the end of the session. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Shirley Thompson, for sharing on coaching and effective communication. And thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. If you have any other questions, please do feel free to contact myself at William Cosina at leanicontechnology.com, Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we would appreciate if you would complete that and provide your feedback. You'll also receive follow-up emails within 48 hours with a link to view the recording of today's webinar. On behalf of Shirley and all the staff at Lean Icon, we really want to say thank you. And if you have any interest in coaching, do contact Shirley on her email and her business contact. That will be shown in the next slide. And have the best of the rest of the day. Thank you, everyone. Bye.